because they found some weird item in an obscure video game that they share with a small group, like, oh, send me a sword of whatever and I'm gonna send you some weird digital token.
Reactivate the curiosity, the interest of people in money by reconnecting them to the materiality, to the physicality of it.
Counselors at work with their family, meeting and meets, all that is really real for them. But the history of money, inflation, well, actually, inflation is a real subject now, and people begins to understand what inflation is. And that's maybe a reason that is easier in 2024 to talk about Bitcoin.
Sort of recognize the purity of it by the sound of it.
So we can still do that today, obviously, and it sounds like that.
Whoa, beautiful. So later on, you have to tell me about this this evening you spent with the other French guys discussing the fall of Rome, and then the sort of reaction they got when you showed them the coins. I mean, that's something that'll be fun. We discuss. I mean, and the whole idea behind this episode is to step back and reflect upon this challenging mission that we've set ourselves to, we're contributing to. Sometimes it's even quite frustrating to realize that the passion that we have, this obsession that we want to share with people is not generating much interest, and these curiosities that sometimes is lacking is what's frustrating. Now, whenever we got someone becoming curious about the subject, it's almost like a victory, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is, because I mean, those subjects are not some everyday people concerns. They have all their concerns at work with their family, meeting and meets. All that is really real for them. But the history of money, inflation, well, actually, inflation is a real subject now, and people begins to understand what inflation is. And that's maybe a reason that is easier in 2024 to talk about Bitcoin to people, because they do understand some part of one of the subject that that you need to understand to comprehend Bitcoin. It's one of the Trojan horse, or one of the door that you can open, making them asking themselves, why is money is losing value? Is that normal? So I guess that when inflation is just 2%, people are like, oh yeah, it's fine, it's normal. But when it reach, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%, people begin to feel what inflation really is. And that's a great opportunity to explain what money really is to people. And that's just one step away from understanding. When you understand money, you're just one step away of understanding Bitcoin. That's as easy as that.
Yeah, I had this thought. I mean, I thought, okay, it seems to me that David's approach to educating people about Bitcoin, but especially around money, generally speaking, is about reducing the distance that has grown between people and their money, right? Yes. But as you're saying, the fact that you have a crazy inflation in Canada, and that the economic situation is quite in turmoil, is probably is reducing this gap, right? And it's perhaps in a way that's comparable to what many countries in the world, like populations in many countries in the world, are experiencing. Those people, maybe in Africa, who are so used to having a very dysfunctioning monetary systems, they know from a very, very young age that they have to learn to understand a little bit the value of money,
Yes.
and the relevance of saving your money in euros or dollars, in stronger currencies. Anyway, so I mean, the reflection we had with Anil and Tomer was that um, Bitcoin is not it's quite a specific subject, given that, okay, beyond its complexity, beyond the fact that we've become largely ignorant of what money is, there's also a challenging aspect in that it it forces us to revise and to upgrade our worldview, which can be emotionally and psychologically challenging.
Challenging. Yeah.
Which means we need to, as educators, also fine tune our role. Perhaps it's not just about transferring information, knowledge, and not only teaching skills, but also accompanying people in the gradual deconstruction and reconstruction of their worldview.
Hmm.
And anyway, that was one of the thing we discussed. And in conjunction with this, it means, okay, we need to come up with the right tools. And um, and and the reason why I wanted to have this informal chat with you is because, of course, I mean, each time we have this segment in the Bitcoin Roundtable, you come up with all your monetary artifacts, and you bring some historical knowledge, and you show us the coin, the banknotes, the clay tablets, to illustrate an aspect of Bitcoin, or an aspect of monetary history. But and it's kind of your approach. I mean, it's your passion. It's one of the ways you've chosen to help people understand the importance of sound money. But the true thing is that this was not your starting point. You've never set yourself this mission, right?
No, not at all. I was not at all interested in money or economics or finance at all before make my first encounter with Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies more generally. So yeah, so when I discovered that you could have some form of money that is completely digital, and that you cannot even hold that with your hand, I was like, what the heck is that? I mean, is it a tool for geek, or only geeks that they will exchange that because they found some weird item in an obscure video game that they share with a small group, like, oh, send me a sword of whatever and I'm gonna send you some weird digital token. That's really the first picture that came to me. Oh, it's a tool for some weird guy in the basement is going to exchange that for some weird items on their game. That's really the first image. Some people would have the first image about Bitcoin like it's for criminals, it's for, like, those type of falsehood. But for me was like, wow, why would people exchange a virtual token? It make no sense. It made no sense to me. But when I read the Bitcoin standard and learned the first bits of information about the history of money, what money really is, what money really was in the past, it really connect, like, really fast in my head. So,
Yeah,
oh, okay, so those weird digital token, have some sort of sense because they're limited. That's as simple as that. It really connected in my head, and I was like, okay, the Bitcoin standard book is really good, but it's not a but it's just that the first third of the book is about the history of money. And I was like, I want to know more. It was not enough. It covers a lot of subject. It's really great, but I was like, I want to know more about this specific subject, the history of
yeah.
money. And I bought, like, I don't know, like 20 or 30 books about the history of money, and I've read them all, and that's really where I felt like I needed to know more, because I wanted to be able to explain why it's important to have sound money to people. And to do that, you need to have like some historic example and some material to share with them. People won't believe you if you say, yeah, sound money is great, we should do that. You have to explain it to them. So that's the journey I made. I was like, yeah, I'm going to read the whole history of money, and find where life was good, and where we had those periods of sun money. And I will also look at the period we didn't have sun money, and what was life was at those time. And it's really showing, what at every time in history we begin to print some paper money, the society goes to shit. That's as easy as that. It's super simple. So one day when I'm going to write my book about money, I'm going to highlight those periods. We had some money, and then we printed some money. Boom, the society collapsed. And then, to conclude on that, I will not pretend that it's because you print money that the society collapse. But what you can say is that when society is really close to collapsing, they need to print money every time.
Mhm.
Like the economic system is broken, and they're like, yeah, so we don't have enough revenue, so we need to find a solution to continue as we did before. So they print money, and boom, well, it's exactly what we're living right now.
Crazy. The crazy thing is that this metamorphosis, or this transition that you've experienced in the past few years, much of it took place in this very basement you're talking from, right? You're you're,
Yes,
you're in,
exactly.
and the way I see it is, if I recall well, you started mining shitcoin in this basement with secondhand hardware, recycled hardware, and so on, and then for some reason, gradually, as many of us, you became more of a Bitcoiner maximalist, and then this is when you authored your excellent beginner friendly book.
Yeah,
Do you have it with you?
yeah, a bit more closer, but yeah, that's
Yeah, I
fine.
mean, so a few years later, we find you with authoring this book. You have it in French, in English. You become this Bitcoiner maximalist, educating people about Bitcoin, and then you transition again toward this new role whereby it's not so much about Bitcoin exclusively, but about sound money, and indeed you've found a passion in monetary history, and you want to basically trigger the same curiosity in this subject in other people, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, basically, the one of the reason I found that money is a great tool to interest people in those subject is when I was invited to conference. I brought those very famously known now bookmark for my book. And the reason I have those is because I wanted to order a bookmark to give to people with my bookmarks, to give to people with my book.
Right.
But it was cheaper to buy those fiat hyperinflated fiat currencies. So I
That's
bought
it.
them like a brick like this with 1,000 bookmark was about, at the time, maybe 30 or $40. It was cheaper than purchasing, well, creating, well, order some custom made bookmarks. So that's what I did. And when I was distributing those to people, they were really interested in knowing why are you giving me free money? It didn't make sense for them. I was able to bring a lot of people to the session room where I was presenting my sessions in some conference. So that's one of the reason I was like, yeah, maybe that's a great subject to try to reach people, and make them understand that those subjects might be important, and maybe they should dig a little bit to see if there's could be a problem with money. They will say, yeah, it won't happen with euro, or it won't happen with the dollar. But the more they read about it, or the more you
Yeah.
explain it to them, like, oh yeah, well, will it happen? And you see in their face that, oh, it might happen to our currency. And I think it's the best tool I've ever used to arrange people. More
Yeah.
more than my book even, in the sense that people who are going to buy my book are at least a bit interested in the subject. But if I give this blue book to a random person, it will just give it to someone else or leave it on a table, or it won't dig on it. If you give me a book about the history of cars, I won't read it. I will just dip it there, drop it on my shelf, and that's it, because the subject is not interesting to me. But if I give you a free hyperinflated bill, it will create something in your head if you never think of the subject. And a very few people refuse the bill. A very few. There's a type of people that will refuse the bill for some reason.
Interesting.
Less than 1 on 10 people will refuse the bill. And I guess that half of that is because they think I try to scam them, or I
Yeah.
try to give them some pamphlet, some publicity or marketing thing.
So basically, what it seems to me is that the approach you've sort of chosen is to reactivate the curiosity, the interest of people in money by reconnecting them to the materiality, to the
So
physicality of it, right?
yes,
Which we've lost largely.
yes,
And so it's largely about breaking this distance. We've become increasingly detached from our money, and so I try to figure out, okay, we feel distant from our money. What are different dimensions on which we can examine that? And so I came up with this observation that we've distanced ourselves morally from money, physically, linguistically, and also cognitively. Shall
yes.
we shall we discuss these points? I mean,
Yes, it's crazy because um, I think the what the advance in technology in payment methods are making us less and less using cash, physical bills. And there's kind of good reason to it, like it's more convenience, less chance of getting mugged, or there's some great reason. I mean, digital money is great, but what it does is that um, the governments and the authorities are kind of telling people that cash money is bad for in some ways. Like, remember in the pandemics, the cash was dirty. So they were not
yeah.
they were telling us not using cash because they could have viruses on it. That's one of the thing we saw. And in Europe, it's really crazy. I mean, you can purchase some things like more than 300 euros or 600 euros in cash because of fraud. So the government are like, yeah, if you have more than if you pay for more than 600 euros in cash, it could be bad because maybe you're making fraud. And in Canada, if you have more than like three two or $3,000 in cash with you, you're a suspect. If the police see that, they can detain you and ask where the money come from and all that. I mean, I do understand a bit. It's like it's to prevent criminals to have like drug money and all that. But what it does in the end is like a guy who's going to deposit like $5,000 of cash he had on his business, because some people still use cash. If he's arrested for some reason, like missing a light or whatever, they can ask. And if he has it, they can detain him and ask where the money comes from. I guess the guy will say, well, look, it's my deposit. I think it will be fine. But it's kind of strange that you cannot,
Yeah, so I
like,
think there's indeed, in this digital age, we are using less and less cash just because it's less practical,
exactly.
and at the same time, the governments have well understood that whereas they could hardly control what you were doing, the sort of transactions you were engaging in, with whom. When you were using cash, they understand that the level of control they can have on digital money is far greater. So indeed, they've used the COVID. I don't know if you could say that, but certainly the COVID was a period of time where they've said, don't use cash. It's dirty. You're gonna get some microbes, and it's from a public hygiene point of view, you don't want to use cash, etc. I mean, it seems like it's a trend that is going to be difficult to fight. It seems like in a couple of generations we won't have physical cash anymore, right?
No, no, of course.
If we look at the morality of money, I mean, definitely in many cultures, certainly in the Christian, uh, culture, we have this ingrained idea that money is slightly dirty. You don't want to touch it, etc. I mean, in my own experience, there are a few people when they learn that I'm focused on Bitcoin and etc. Their first reaction is, oh, they are disappointed to see that Jack, he was working for development, helping people get water and everything. Now is dealing with these dirty financial things. We've totally lost track of the fact that money it can be neutral, can be
Yeah,
a
it's a
positive
tool
force for cooperation when it's sound. That's
that can
it.
be used even by the people you were helping in those country with the water. Well, giving them access to financial tools, and as you said, it's like this in Quebec. Also, we have a big Christian heritage, and in Quebec, people who makes money are suspect. If you make a lot of money, took advantage of some people to.
Yeah, you must be cheating in some way. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So it's really big here. This idea that entrepreneur are not that much.
celebrated. Yeah.
Yeah, the people are yeah, they find them a bit suspects.
So moral distancing, physical detachment. There's also some degree of linguistic impoverishment.
Yes.
It appeared to me, and here I'm coming up with some example from French. Perhaps you can come up with similar example in Canada. But I found it interesting to look at those words we use in French. We in the past, when I was kid. We used oseille, blé, thune, balle, bricks. I mean, those are all slang words to talk about money. Oseille and blé, we're talking about plants, about wheat, cereals. So basically, there's a direct connection to commodity money,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Tunes, it's coming from Old French tune and tuna from Arabic language, and it relates to the coin, the currency. So there's the materiality of it. Bal is like the is a direct reference to the rounded
Bullets.
shape of the coin. It's like the bullet,
Mhm.
and the brick. In French, we used to say one brick is like 1,000 franc or 1,000 euro, and it's like a stack. I don't know if the shape of it is meant to yeah.
That's a brick.
Yeah.
That's a brick. Yeah.
So there's a lot of materiality to it, and perhaps this impoverishment of the language we use to talk about money is also reflective of the fact that the fiat money that we use is not backed by anything tangible. It's more virtual than anything, is it? It's
Yes.
just
One example. I've heard people use the word plastic. Like if you pay by credit cards, if you say, "Oh, I don't have cash on me," you would say, "You have plastic." Like
yeah.
it's paying by credit card. So it's an expression that I heard is like, wow, that's another step distancing us from the basically we all understand that the money the plastic money, the card is not the money is the information that is linked to the card.
and
So
and so in terms of this cognitive detachment, well, what can we say? We can say that just as most of humanity has been illiterate for the largest part of its history,
mhm.
men have probably been largely ignorant of financial matters for most of times, although for a long time it wasn't that complicated, right? I mean, you probably knew about some commodity money, silver, gold. I mean, actually, you stressed the fact that in French we still use argent.
Oui.
Literally, it means silver.
Yeah.
Like, do you have some money? Do you have silver in French? Tu as de l'argent? Um, which means we've kept this reference to the precious metal, right?
Exactly.
And I believe that probably for a long time you didn't need to know much more than that to properly operate with commodity money, with precious metals. That was enough. Now in the fiat world, things have complexified tremendously, and it's becoming just very difficult for people to understand what's happening. And it's becoming even more difficult since there's this very opaque lingo jargon from the financial system, which make it pretty much impossible for the layman to understand. And if I understand it well, most of the people who are trained as economists and who work in this financial sector, many of them don't have a clue what money really is, right?
No, no, I had a chat with a real economist, like a guy is working for a bank, and he studied economics at university. He has a master in economics, and I was telling him just some bits of the history of money and how we came with the fiat system. Now in schools, in universities, they will explain money a bit like you would if we would to discover a new way to do our agriculture or medicine. Okay, it's like we found a new way, and we're gonna take everything we learn from here, and we got put it on in we're delete it. It doesn't exist.
Right,
It's antiquated, and
right.
we're gonna just use the new way we just found. It's exactly what happened with money. They
Mhm.
invented the central banks, and they rejected everything from the past. Like, oh yeah, so at some point we had some money, but it's not good. Some money is really antiquated. Commodity money is really antiquated. It's not a real thing now. We use central bank. It's the only way the world can work.
And so now we're reaching the point where even in the affluent Western countries, which have maintained sort of the illusion of a good management of money or proper money, the population now is realizing that this is not the case. They suffer through inflation. Inflation is no more the mere technical term used by economists on the TV or radio. It's becoming something that they experience in their flesh, right? Right, and so this distance that's gradually expanded between people and their money. Now we're coming to the moment where people are being sort of crushed economically, and they sort of intuit that there's something about the money that they need to understand, right? And your approach, and I find it really important, is bringing back the materiality of the thing to say, look, this is what we've learned in history. This is the proof that money has evolved this way, and this is also another proof that this is how you can corrupt money, and those are the consequences. So I love this direction that you've taken in your pedagogy of sound money. What are your lesson learned from sharing your passion for coins, not notes, all type of monetary artifact? The other day, you mentioned that you've participated in some sort of online Twitter space conversation
Yes.
with French economists who were discussing the reason for the fall of Rome, right?
Yes.
And you said something quite fun happened, right?
Yes. Well, I was listening to this podcast with a great interest. It was super interesting. It was there was Theo Maugenet, Gégé, and Ulrich. Those are French Bitcoiners, and Ulrich is really great with the history of Roman time, and he was explaining the fall of Rome and all the money shenanigans that the emperor were doing. And what I find interesting here is that those guys know their subject. They know all
Yeah,
those emperor. They know the metal. Um, the purity, they even know the purity of each coin at each year. That
yeah,
graph that there was 92% at, or 97% at first, and it lost some gram of gold every years and all that. They all know that by heart in their head, but I think they never touched or saw the precise coin. So it was like, oh, I showed them like a denarius from Marc Aurel. It was at the end of the Pax Romana, so it was the peak of the civilization of Rome. So the coin is basically just almost pure silver. It shows it's shining. And then I was showing a coin that is 100 years old, younger, so it was made 100 years after, and
Yeah.
it's Antoninianus anyway, a weird coin name. It's 1.5 time bigger, but it's worth 2 denarius. So there was inflation there, and there was not even a trace of silver on it. It was like just dipped in silver, and now the silver is all gone. So you can see those two coin side by side and see that there's one is pure silver, and I mean their faces were like super amazed, like child looking
Yeah.
at a at some new toys, So my point here is that even people who are aware of all that, with up to the fine grainy details, still like to see the real thing, the artifact. So that's why I took up on this journey.
I'm not surprised. I mean, the other day with Tomer and Anil, we were looking at the different dimensions of learning, the different way we learn, and we learn visually, auditory. We learn from logic, and you see the little hand here. We learn from tactile, from kinesthetic contact with the subject matter, and in our case, it's fairly obvious that we may learn as much as we can about the history of money, about the devaluation, the debasement events, etc. When you touch the coin, when you see its reality, you really reappropriate the subject. It's as if you reclaim the subject matter,
Hmm.
and you sort of also reappropriate the tool itself, and you realize that this is the history of people trying to come up with the best money as possible. You're reestablishing the connection with the
Yes.
tool itself, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And you just mentioned sound money, and I'm going to give you a real life example of what it could makes you feel something, touching or seeing or even hearing the artifacts, and that's the example I'm gonna show you right now. The term sound money. We in French we have sonnant et trébuchant. Trébuchant means it's a reference to trebuchet. Some kind of balance with a stick. So, and sona means sounding money. And another example I gave during that podcast is those real silver coins. The people in back in the days were able to knock on the money and hear if it was pure from the
You
sound
could sort
itself.
of recognize the purity of it by the
Exactly.
sound of it.
So we can still do that today, obviously, and it sounds like
Let's do
that.
it. Whoa, beautiful.
And this one here, that's another alloy of silver.
That's a sharper sound, isn't it?
So yeah, so it makes really pure resounding sound, and it
Yeah.
and every time I do that, I feel like I'm connected with those artifacts. And back in those days with the standard coins they had, I think they were able to like
Authenticate the
yeah,
quality of it.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's another reason the coin became. So that's a denarius right there. It's a
Yeah.
bit it's a bit thick, okay, and later the coin were more large and less
Hmm.
thick, and one of the reasons is because it was easier to test for a sound like this. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. In your approach, as you take people by the end, and you tell them the history of money in a very gentle and fun way, presenting your coins and monetary artifact, people open their eyes, they're interested to know about that. Gradually, basically, you're laying out the problem. Laying out the problem, and then the curious one will want to know more about possible solutions and so on. And that's when you bring about that of Bitcoin, right?
If you don't understand money and the history of money and inflation, basically Bitcoin is just a number go up meme. I mean, if you don't understand the role of Bitcoin, what Bitcoin is useful for, and you don't understand money and all the problem it solves, well, you're in Bitcoin just to see the number go up, basically. So it's really important to understand money and the problem that Bitcoin can solve in this technology, to see its use past its price. Yep.
That's it. I mean, that's what Daniel Prince was saying the other day. We came for the money, we came for the prospect of making more units of the fiat money, like number go up
Yep.
attraction. But we stayed because we understood a few things about the importance of sound money. And it's also a fascinating subject, and definitely a fight worth fighting for, right? So, David, thanks a lot, and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.